So, as promised, let's quickly go through how IRS decide fairness. Remember, a single factor does not, guarantee approval. Okay, it's a more like the fairness. You need to weigh the overall situation kind of thing. So we need to make our best case. That's the thing that we can do, and we tell our side of the story, and then IRS make the final decision. Okay, but I'm not just telling you, hey, you should do this, and you shouldn't do that. Okay, all this needs to be true. Okay, you can't just say, hey, this is just a formula, and I say, hey, because you said, well, they will consider all this factor, I will just choose whatever helped my case and write it in, and whatever hurt my case, I'll just don't mention it. You can't do that. Okay, I just want to tell you that you need to pay special attention to this field, and the fundamental thing that you need to do is to do that truthfully. All right. So let's go through this. So the marital status, right? So the divorce or separated helps your case, okay? Because all this serves one purpose, saying that you are the innocent spouse. So if you divorce, if you separated, it's more likely for the IRS to decide, well, maybe you are innocent because you got no knowledge of that, force or not correct deductions and all that, or understatement and all that, because you divorced or separated, you have no idea. So if you divorce or separated, do tell them, so this helps your case, okay? But if you're still married and you're living together, I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do, but if you already still married and still living together, and your file is innocent, it's become a little bit fishy because, you folks are living together, so a lot of information is exchanged. So it's less likely, I'm not saying that you are not innocent, but it's less likely for you to say, hey, you are innocent, you got nothing to do with all this, understatements and deductions and all that, right? Okay, that's the marital status. What about economic hardship? Okay, so paying would cause serious hardship. That help your case. Okay, so basically it's like more about the this like a flexible part, because come on, they can't just say, hey, you need to pay all that, and they go into debt, bankrupt, and all that. If you can say that, well, you can't even meet the basic needs now, right? So if I call this paying all this, and you're basically causing me serious hardship, okay? I can't even live anymore because of the economic situation here. Well, that's also a criteria that IRS will consider, right? Maybe they will alleviate. I'm not saying they will do, but they need to consider, okay? But if you can afford, and you can afford without even major hardship, so it's like a no big deal, okay? That means you got a lot of money, so maybe it will definitely, I think, will hurt your case, because you got no economic hardship, you got no trouble paying it, and you still argue that you don't want to pay because you're innocent. That maybe hurt your case, okay? And of course, knowledge. I just show you at this form, right? Knowledge was the highest education level, and here, right? So knowledge is not just about the level of education, but rather it's like whether you know this or you reasonably know this. Okay, you can say, well, I didn't know about the understatement, right? And I couldn't reasonably know. It's like, for example, you're separated, or you have no idea that the other spouse have some business and all that, or if you don't have the knowledge of that, right? You don't even understand what's going on, Okay, for example, it's a really complicated stuff, and say you write some educational level that maybe for you pretty hard to understand that, and for example, you got like correspondence, even though you have a really high education level, but you got like a correspondent, you got some email saying that, you ask that, and they just didn't tell you, right? You can also argue that, because you can argue that you didn't know about this, or you couldn't possibly understand, or couldn't possibly or reasonably know about the honor statement. Okay. Yeah, but what is hurt in your case? So, for example, you knew, or you have some reason to suspect something is not correct. Okay, if you have reason to suspect, but you do nothing, that kind of hurt your case. Okay, so yeah, that's about the knowledge, not just about the educational level, but also about, do you know about this? Okay, did you know about this? You didn't know, or you didn't? You knew. Okay, so let's talk about here legal obligations. Okay, so legal obligations is that you have to use this also sort of a reverse engineering about the say divorce decree. So a divorce decree, that's more about the legal field. You can consult a lawyer, but you can sort of, from a tax point of view, if you got a very good divorce decree, and as that divorce decree, you can say, hey, divorce decree says that your ex must pay the tax, right? Something like that. You got a very favorable divorce decree. You know what? That's the legal obligation, and you can say, hey, I got divorced, and there's a divorce decree, and it's my ex who should pay. Okay, so basically that's the legal obligations that help you the case. But if the legal obligations say that some decrees say that you must pay, or you have to pay like your share or something like that, depending on the specific legal decree, well, that kind of hurt your case, because like legally, right, this is like you should also pay something like that, right? So yeah, I think this is like the hardest one to argue, because that's some like legal obligations. Okay, for this significant benefits, I already mentioned this hundreds of times. Okay, you didn't benefit from the or unpaid or underpaid tax. You didn't benefit, and you didn't see the money. It didn't come to your joint account. So you can say, hey, I actually got like no benefit from all this. I'm innocent. Okay, so yeah, I'm also do the internal audit. So one of the rule of audit is like follow the money, right? So if you don't know what's going on, just follow the money. If the money comes to this account, and this account is associated to some people, right, you can sort of infer what's going on. So follow the money, and of course, this is kind of the application of the rule to follow the money, because if you benefit significantly, it's kind of hard to argue. It really hurt your case, because you say you live lavishly off that unreported income. Like kind of really hard for you, or for the tax professional who represents you, to make this case say, hey, you're innocent, because come on, you live lavishly, and you do that like unreported, so maybe it's intentional rather than innocent. Okay, so but if you didn't benefit from the unpaid tax, that's will help your case definitely, right? And for compliance history, this is some of the thing that because this, like, you got like 2 years, as I said in my previous video, you got like 2 years to file. So a lot of people say, hey, I need to resolve this, and then I'll continue to say file the tax after that year, right? But here's the thing, that will hurt you if you don't like file and pay correctly in the following years. you say, well, I solved this, and after that, I will solve the next year and the next year because you got like 2 years period. Well, that will hurt your case. Okay? So the compliant history says that you stay compliant afterwards. So because it's like you find your joint return and that's a specific problem here, okay? But since you are innocent, it's more likely that you don't know what's going on, right? After that, for example, after divorce, you find that and you're still compliant. You fight correctly and you paid correctly, you stay compliant after that for like 1 year, 2 years. Okay? So that can make the help your case because you compliant, you stay compliant after that. So that's going to help you from the compliant history point of view. But if you say, well, I need to solve that problem here and then I solve what's coming after, that's going to hurt the case because, say, for example, you continue to miss filing or you owe other taxes. It's kind of say, well, you are like not in a good standing with the IRS. You kind of you don't want them to assume that you are kind of person that don't pay the tax, right? So yeah, so you don't want to leave this compliant history as a like negative factor that will hurt your case. Okay, it's natural, it's normal. Everyone make mistakes. So if you do make mistakes, you can argue, right? But that does not mean that it sort of waiver you from other obligations from future on. You have to stay compliant. Okay? That's about compliant history. And as I said in previously, I briefly mentioned abuse or control. Okay? This happens a lot to the like the weaker side of the relationship because the weaker side may try to avoid conflict. Okay, so for example, you asked your spouse's like for example it's ex, right, your ex spouse. You ask before, but every time you ask and they will like get really angry and dismiss him, all right, and then you sort of fear conflicts. Okay, and abuse and control not necessarily is like the physical abuse or control. Okay, and this can be some of the manipulation or some pressure that without physical abuse. Okay, so you have to think really hard about this because it can also make a strong case or like hurt your case. So for example, you were pressured, you were say manipulated, or you abused. You got some like a call to 911 scenario, okay, that would definitely say you're abused or controlled, and you have to make this like a connected with the say every time I ask about the question, even though you have like a doubt or have some reasonably doubt about suspect something was wrong, but every time you do that, the spouse get like really frustrated and try to argue and all that. You may even got into a fight over this. Or other part of the spouse got like abuse or control history, it can really help your case, okay? And it can even like overrule a lot of other factors. So this is like really huge factors. Sometimes it can overrule any other factor, even though say you already got the knowledge, you already suspect, but you are too afraid to bring it up because you already bring it up like once or twice and you got like losing control. Because you are lack of control, and you're feeling the conflict. You are pressured, you are manipulated. So you know what? That can really help your case, okay? Because you're the innocent one, right? And the opposite, right? Everything get the opposite. So for example, you have equal control, we got equal responsibilities and all that. So it's you're not being abused and you're not being controlled. That will hurt your case, okay? So yeah, basically, as long as you state your factors like honestly, but also pay attention to this field, the specific factor, specific field that IRS will take into consideration greatly, and they will like doing the overall review of it. But as long as you are qualified, and depending on IRS the final review, final decision, they will decide whether it's fair or not. Okay, so they will have the final say of it.